Okay, let's talk about climate change. Now, Scott Morrison has a point, doesn't he, when he says that no matter what we do on our own emissions on this front, China will take up that slack in just a few days. I mean, if you believe climate change is a major cause of the bushfires, which you do, aren't we in serious trouble no matter what happens in domestic politics?
It's quite right we need the whole world to act. But Australia at the moment is not only doing anything domestically. On the world stage, we're a handbrake. You had Angus Taylor, a discredited minister with no credible policy, go to the Madrid Climate Change Conference and be one of the recalcitrants, be bracketed with Saudi Arabia and a couple of other countries arguing for less action. And we're arguing now at the same time as the government says, oh, we're going to meet our emissions. The lie of that was exposed by the fact that they went to Madrid and argued for an accounting trick.
Okay, fair enough. But what's wrong with you just saying now, which you've been reluctant to do in recent days, we are sticking to this 45% reduction target by 2030? Why are you afraid of endorsing that target you took to the election?
That was in 2015. That was a 2015 target established for 15 years' time. Guess what, Andrew? There's no TARDIS. I can't go back in time and say in 2022 our 15-year target will be very different, by the way. 15 years from 2022 is 2037, not 2030.
Will that be a policy then? Will it be framed around 2037 instead of 2030?
We'll have our policy based upon... I'll give you this...
So it's too late for 45% reduction, is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that at all.
Well, you seem to be.
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that you can't define what your point is in terms of where you'll go to the election in 2022 at the beginning, in January 2020, because the circumstances will change.
Your policy will involve a higher target of reductions by 2030 than the government's.
We'll take climate change seriously. And I'll tell you
well, surely it will be greater. Surely your target will be greater than theirs.
Well,
otherwise, what's the point of all the rhetoric?
We'll make the announcement, and I would be I'm trying to be generous to them. Hopefully, they'll wake up tomorrow and go, there could be something in this climate change thing, and take action. I don't want to let them off the hook, but we will have a very strong position on climate change. But the reason why we can't now, it's a bit like saying, you know, this is a term, if do an AFL analogy, it's a 4-quarter game between 2019 and 2022. You're asking me how it will play out in the final quarter. You've got to know what the 3-quarter time score is, whether you're putting all your people forward, putting all your people back, what the framework is, what the score is at that time. And the idea, frankly, I think it was a mistake in 2019 to continue to say, well, we'll do exactly what we're doing in 2015, as if it hadn't changed. Earlier on, I spoke about the 6-year period. What we did during that period was to add on policies. So everything stayed the same, and we just added more on. We've seen how that plays out.
So 45% now...
doesn't end well.
45% now by 2030 is too ambitious. That's what you're really saying.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we'll determine our policy. It will be as ambitious as possible. You know what, Andrew? I want to have a very strong framework. I want to be ambitious, and I want it to be as strong as possible. But you've got to know what your starting point is, and I am not going to let this government off the hook. Part of what I think we should have said more of at various times in the early stages of the last term and the one before is that's a question for the government. But we will, on climate change, for example, one of the things that we're likely to do is to announce a longer term target before we announce, because by definition,
2050?
You're able
Zero
to
net
do
emissions,
that.
2050?
Well, we'll wait and we'll make our announcements at an appropriate time, but you can make those longer term announcements before you then make announcements that are impacted by what's happening right now.